What's up, everyone? A brand new podcast coming at you hot. But before we get started, Sked Social. This podcast is brought to you by Sked Social. I work at Sked Social. I love Sked Social. And we've actually gone mad. You can actually still get the Black Friday discount of 50% off annual plans. And all you have to do is punch in the code SKEDBF50 and you can get that. So just do it now before we even get started in the episode because you're not going to regret it. Now on to today's episode with Issac Peiris, the founder of Pistachio. So I first come across Isac's work on LinkedIn, been loving his posts and his sort of thoughts around go-to-market and brand-led sort of growth. So it was actually pretty cool to pick his brain about all that good stuff. But before he was at Pistachio, he led growth for the Daily Oz. So he scaled their newsletter to 180K subs in 10 months. And he was working at Mamma Mia too, and he grew their subs by 30,000 plus members. So he's doing some good stuff. So we thought we better have him on. In this episode, there's plenty of takeaways. The main one, I thought, the one that I can think of off the top of my head now is just the big crossover between product management and growth marketing and how those teams should speak together and work together, which I found super interesting considering with what we're building at Sked at the moment and how we operate and how we work, which is cool. And then sort of understanding the end user is crucial. So we dive deep into that a lot. And then like identifying user pain points. So that's always key to finding effective solutions, really. I just think his unique lens of being in product and growing audiences and working in media, he really understands how brands work and how they can actually grow and leverage that growth. So I'll just shut up and let you enjoy the episode. Issac, my brother, welcome to the Scene podcast, mate. Actually, super pumped to have you here, mate. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. No, I'm super keen to chat.
You've got a nice little background there behind you. You got the lemons on the blue and white. I love it.
Yeah, just a bit of Etsy artwork. You know how it is.
Mate, I need to do that. I've been looking on Temu and there's just nothing there that I like trust in terms of will this be good quality? Because at the moment I'm in the back room and it's just a bare blank wall. It's just like boring, you know?
This was the hack on Etsy. You get the digital prints, and you just get like a PDF file, and then you can just go and print it out like whenever you want, whatever size, etc.
Okay, that makes so much sense now. I love spending time or wasting some time just looking at a bunch of different artwork and stuff and
Yeah,
don't know the meaning of a lot of things, but it just looks cool, hey?
exactly.
But
Good
mate,
procrastination task, that one.
but mate, we're not procrastinating here because we've got a heavy hitter. Honestly, I think with this podcast and our audience, a lot of people play in the social media marketing sort of growth world. But for your background in particular, I'd love to sort of dive into what does fractured go-to-market look like inside a company?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what we see a lot working with clients at Pistachio is a lot of the time it's quite the fractured go to market is because of executing in silos. Like different elements of go to market are often split up between responsibilities between different teams. So you've got marketing broadly, but that's split between like brand, performance. A lot of the time, your best audience and customer insights sit in your customer support team, and very little of that connects back to sales and a lot of the revenue generation side of things. So when in reality, good go to market is a combination of all of those things, like a really strong understanding of customer needs and pain points and what they value, being able to establish strong brand positioning that has like, great trust building between the business as like more broadly and the brand and the audience. And then there's the specific kind of marketing bits and pieces of whatever you're going to market with, and then connecting that back through conversion into sales. So ultimately, like a go-to-market engine is all of those things, but a lot of the time, they're just so siloed and fragmented, not leading one into the other really nicely that it causes a pretty big fracture.
Where do you see the most like common mistakes there where it comes up all the time and you're just like, yeah, that's a pattern?
Um, Probably not treating customer success as the growth asset that it is, to be honest. I think there's a lot that there's, quite infamously, marketing and sales needing to talk better together, and like that's a whole thing. Everyone knows that there's a bridge there that needs to kind of happen. Um, but alongside that, I would say customer success. Realistically, you can only be as good as from a brand and growth perspective. You can only be as good as your understanding of the customer. If someone else comes along and their product is slightly worse than yours, but they're able to make customers feel like they understand them better than you, they will win. They will win the day, right? Like people feel they can trust them more. People feel more seen, heard, understood. These guys get it. These guys know what's up. They will win the day. And so I think that ultimately customer success are the people who have their finger on the pulse of what is going on with customers on a day-to-day basis more than any other area of the business. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. Like I've seen a lot of businesses pivot the CMO role into a chief customer officer role, and their job is more around talk to customers every day. You are the voice of the customer. And I really like that approach. It works really well for some businesses. I know Intrepid is one who have made that shift and seen a lot of success. Lee Barnes, their chief customer officer, does amazing work.
He's got a nice beard too, doesn't he?
He has a fantastic beard, mate. Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I would say probably that is the gap is understanding of the customer, and a lot of the time that sits in customer success, which people don't really give due credit for and extract those insights successfully.
It's funny because I've been thinking the same way and experienced the same thing. Like talking to our customer success team, they know everything. They know literally everything about the business, what people are saying, and now just sort of going through research calls and things and stuff that we're like doing with the company. It's like, I don't know. There's just so many. Like you get the real insights, you get the actual reality, and it's like I think if everyone in the business done a little bit of that, where they're actually talking and like was part of that like routine or habit, like you'd actually understand a lot more about your business. Hey.
I agree 100%. I was actually at an event a couple of weeks ago listening to the co-founder of Notion speak. Ivan
Yep.
was out, and he was saying he still has all of the customer support tickets. He still has notifications on for their customer support. And Notion is a ridiculously big business. And he caveated, like he doesn't reply to the tickets. They have a customer success team that do that. But he gets notified of every ticket that comes in. And so he can see just at a glance, like what are people asking questions about? What are people having issues with? Like where are the challenges? So even though he's not like in it answering the tickets, because obviously like he's co-founder of this huge business, he still has that very, very immediate access to what are the trends, which I thought was super interesting, especially for a business as big as Notion and as innovative and kind of forward thinking as they are. That was a pretty major one.
What about like apprehension? Is there anything that you see there where it's just like, oh, people aren't just feeling this, but I know that that could just unlock so much more growth?
As in like internally, people being
Yeah,
like,
internally. Yeah.
yeah, well, I think that it comes down to like internal stakeholder management, right? Like if people don't see the point in something, they're never going to give it full attention, and the best strategy is the one that's actually executed. Otherwise, it kind of all comes to nothing. So like it is definitely a big problem. And I'm not saying that people need to be reading every ticket that comes in and all that kind of stuff, but I think there's an acknowledgement that customer success holds a lot of valuable insights, and it is not the job of customer success to like identify and surface those insights for growth initiatives, right? And I think if we can agree on those two things, there are insights in customer touch points, and it is not the customer support person's job to identify growth opportunities out of that. If we can agree on those two things, then I think there's a productive conversation to be had about, well, we agree that there's opportunity here. We agree that people who are in it day to day are not necessarily the ones who are the best to identify those opportunities. So what then needs to happen? Because we know there's opportunity. We don't want to leave that on the table.
And what does happen from there? Like, what are some strategies?
Um, much deeper integration. And again, it comes back to the silos being the problem. Like it's got to connect so much deeper between teams. I've seen it like something as basic as monthly retros, not to add another meeting to the calendar. But then even just stuff like the Notion co-founder, like having people just with access to viewing what some of those trends are, that as a starting point can be really interesting. I've also seen other businesses do, like leadership secondment type thing. So their entire exec team work at least 1 day a quarter, like actually work in customer support or work in areas of the business. And so they're really kind of thrown in the deep end of seeing all of that. And that kind of stuff can be really useful as well.
I love that. Like in our Slack channels, we're just pumping with the product team, customer success, and everyone's sort of talking and sharing and just seeing how those different things interact. Like even starting at Scared and just going to all the different meetings and understanding their language and sort of how they see things in different perspectives. It's like it really helps you shape your strategy because you know sort of how things are operated, how people think about things, and like, it just gives you more of an understanding to how to best get the most growth out of what you've got, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot to be said for workplace culture when it comes to this kind of stuff as well. Like if everyone is aligned on the values and mission of the organization, they're quite incentivized to want to see it succeed and whatever part they can play in that they're kind of keen for. I think the challenge comes when it's a really big business or it's one of those where people are very much just like, this is a job, which is totally fine and respectable. But um if people see it as like, oh, well, that's not my job, like I don't need to think about that, then that can be really challenging to try and bridge that gap. But if people are quite personally invested in success of the business, and like I know you guys at Scared have great workplace culture, and there's a lot of other like businesses who have really lent on that. And there is some vagueness that comes with certain roles in workplaces like that, but ultimately that is what makes this work really well as an engine because that kind of environment is the precursor for successful cross-team collaboration.
I love that. And embracing like the fluidity. I don't even know if that's a word, but like, being fluid and stuff and
Yeah.
how roles change. And, oh, just because this wasn't in my job description, I don't know. Sometimes there's different things that you need to do and get outside that and just sort of, I don't know. It's a mindset, isn't it? Especially when
Mm.
you're hiring. It's like people who want to win, who are ambitious, who want to see the team do well. Not that they have to spend all their waking hours after work doing stuff. It's more just when you're there, you actually want the team to succeed.
Yeah, it's outcome driven.
Yeah.
Like people are aligned on we want to achieve X outcome. What can we do to get there? Rather than like input or responsibility driven of my job is to do this set of tasks. It's kind of like a startup mentality, right? It's just like here is like we want to grow. Here's how we're thinking about doing that. Let's just go and figure out how to do it, rather than the kind of structured stuff, which is easier to do in a smaller business for a lot of reasons. But the businesses that can kind of carry that mindset over as they scale are the ones that are crushing right now.
Let's talk about positioning. So, how do you fix broken positioning?
I think there's one part of this that is the internal stakeholder management of getting people to acknowledge that the positioning is broken in the first place. Because positioning is one of those things under the brand umbrella that can be a bit vague or fuzzy at times. So, um, being able to articulate clearly what the result of broken positioning is in business terms is quite important. But ultimately, it's kind of like a broken positioning is a disconnect between what the company or brand is saying and what the audience are receiving or understanding. So like good on the flip side of that, good positioning is not about what the brand says, it's about what the customers repeat back to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so broken positioning is basically a disconnect between those two things. And it doesn't have to be a super drastic like break. I think even to like when I was at the Daily Oz, we were, you know, political news, giving people non-biased information, access to the news that they need to know. And we were internally driving this thing around trust and reliability and being a home of political hard news. And then we rolled out some brand tracking with Tracksuit, really good startup out scale up now out of New Zealand, really cool team.
Connor's the man.
Yeah. We rolled out with those guys, and I remember looking at the dashboard that we got back after the first couple of months, and it has like these word associations that come back, and it was just one big bubble that just said Instagram. And so we were in there like, yeah, we're trustworthy, we're reliable, we're news and this and that. And then what the audience was saying back to us is, oh, that's the Instagram page. And we're like, okay, so there is our work cut out for us. Like if we want to be taken seriously and grow up as a business and move into different channels and all of this kind of stuff, we need to adjust that positioning. We need to be educating the audience and conducting ourselves a little bit differently to shift some of that positioning on the audience side, because clearly what we had been doing was not like converting over into what the audience was perceiving us as.
So that's I love these conversations because it's like talking about the vision and what people actually sort of see you as. So when you have those convos, how do you, in your mind, is it like we still want to surprise and delight and do things like that, but we really need to maybe speak their language, or really is that a big part of it?
100%. Well, I mean, I think so much of this comes back to how well do you understand the people you're talking to. Like that, I'm sure I'm going to repeat that about a million times in this chat, but like that is what it comes back to. And at the end of the day, like I said before, if someone else understands those people better and can convey that to them, they will win no matter what. So yeah, it really does come back to how well do you understand the people that you're talking to and how well can you resonate with them. And this was another thing that was really big at the Daily. I was talking to an audience of young people, is how can we speak across from them rather than down to them? Because you see, a lot of businesses will speak down to young people because they see them as inexperienced or, any of that kind of stuff. And so just by speaking their language and speaking across from them, being young people talking to young people, you can really start to resonate so much more. But that applies for any audience outside of young people. Like anyone that you're trying to reach, if you can prove that you're one of them and you get it, and you're not just someone that's selling to them, people are going to find so much more value in that.
And how do you stay consistent with so you've got the positioning and stuff, and it's like everyone's on the same page, we're interacting, customer support is talking like that. Like, is it best to have meetings and everyone's on the same page? You got a document that you'll go to? Like, what are the best sort of ways that everyone can kind of, even on their personal stuff on LinkedIn, it might be talking about what they're doing?
There's a few things there, right? Because I think there's a foundational set of values or like certain beliefs, things that you agree to be true, that underpin all of that. And that is things to do with, the pain points of the customer and the place that your solution has to play and your tone of voice and your brand and those kind of things. I'm always a little hesitant on things like brand guidelines or tone of voice guidelines or any of that kind of stuff, because I think putting that kind of limitation around it is quite restrictive. Ultimately, what you want is to have a shared set of beliefs and values and then empower different people to live that out in whatever way the channel they're using makes most sense, right? So I think you can see that in a lot of, like Duolingo is a really obvious, like big one. They were, we're going after these young people, we're going to be a bit like edgy. And so on TikTok, they really, really went hard at like the, going off the rails and like doing all the fun stuff. And that works really, really well for them. But it doesn't have to be that for every brand. And that's not necessarily the only thing that works on TikTok. Like, I think it just comes down to, can you have an underlying set of values and beliefs that everyone is aligned with, and then empower individuals to live those out through those platforms. Like, what does this look like on LinkedIn? What does this look like as a video? What does this look like in long form written? Because consistency across touch points is ultimately what is going to drive it home. The disconnect with a lot of this positioning stuff comes from inconsistency. When you have different messages or different appearances across various touch points.
Oh, that's gold, man, honestly. And for people with like zero go-to-market structure, they're just starting from scratch. Like where do you start?
It's a good question. I mean, again, it comes back to who are you talking to? A lot of the time, one of the most common things that I see when it comes to this go-to-market stuff, people will lead with either the outcome, I want to get a million impressions, or they'll lead with the channel. They'll go, we need to post a TikTok video. Those two things come into the equation. You know, having goals is really important. Knowing which channel you're going to use is really important. But you have to understand who you're talking to first. Because there's a lot of businesses out there that are saying, let's get on TikTok. And it's like, you're a B2B sales software. Like, maybe you don't need to be on TikTok. Like, maybe you do. I don't know. But yeah, so understanding who it is that you're talking to is the absolute number one question. Who are you talking to? Is that your customer, or is that audience, which kind of enables a customer down the line? Like, you know, there's this uniqueness to everyone's model, but who are you trying to talk to? And then understand, how are you talking to them? That's kind of then step two. So that's messaging. Like, what are you saying that proves that you understand them better than anyone else? What are you saying to resonate and engage with them? And where are you saying it? Where do those people hang out? And how can you show up there in a way that is meaningful and valuable? And so that's where, you know, things like a lot of businesses now are looking at like Reddit strategies, partially because they're like Reddit is indexed pretty heavily by AI chats, but also it's this thriving community forum. It's not a sales like post in this like broadcast. It's a conversation, and businesses want to join that conversation. So yeah, start with identify your audience, know who they are, know what they're struggling with, and then figure out what it is you're saying to them, where they are, where you're saying it, and meet them there.
Can you talk to us more about like talking to the audience to get the customer? Like, what are some strategies there around where people can get wrong? Because I know I'm a perfect example of being too salesy, or being too like, how do you weave in what you're doing and selling into content that's going to be interesting? You know?
Yeah. So I think it can be a little challenging to get your head around. But what I mean by that difference between audience and customer is, a lot of the time, customer is going to be your decision maker, person that can kind of like sign on the dotted line and kind of make the sale, right? But that doesn't mean that they are the only people you should be talking to. So if you think I mean, in media companies, and this is where, you know, I'm kind of coming from in terms of the experience, but in media companies, your audience is almost always not your customer, right? Like, media business, you're a B2C business in terms of you're trying to attract audience, but really from a business model perspective, you're a B2B business. You're selling sponsorships to advertisers. And so it doesn't make sense to try and attract an audience of advertisers. You're trying to attract your audience. For like Daily Oz example, our audience is young people. We understand them better than anyone else. And then you use that expertise to leverage the conversation with the decision maker. And so that is something that I'm seeing a lot of non-media businesses now starting to do really well in. They're building audiences of people who love what they do, super fans. I mean, Notion is another great example. Like, they have a free tier, they do so much community building. They're community-led growth engine. 99.9% of people who are massive fans of Notion will probably never pay them a cent, right? But that groundswell enables the internal pressure that means that the decision makers are lent in that direction by all of these people who are saying, we want Notion. And so I think that is the difference to understand. Like, when you're looking at this organic content engine, especially, you know, like in a GTM kind of motion, customer and audience are not inherently equal or the same. They might be, they absolutely might be, but don't go in with that assumption, because they also might not be.
I love that. And it's just like bigger, more eyes and stuff. And like, I think with inbound assessing opportunities, that's the best when the business is at that point when you're just like assessing stuff rather than reaching out, and having that noise and having that fame around what you're doing is important too, isn't it? So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Can we talk about that? Like the fame effect as well? Like even just like being out there, what do you decide that you want to go all into? Is it what different strategies? You know what I mean? Like, you all have to think about that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, distribution is the moat these days, right? Like, getting attention that's the war zone right now. It is trying to just get eyeballs on your business. And the businesses that do that really well, will win, and there's a fame effect that comes with that. As you get more and more known, it kind of gets easier and easier. A really great example that I love is Posthog, B2B tech platform, right? They um they were talking about Hacker News and those kind of forums as like Product Hunt, these places where people put a lot of time and effort to trying to hit the front page or go viral on them, right? And I was chatting to one of the content marketers at Posthog because they went and launched a Substack, which was super interesting. And the mindset why they went and did that was, yeah, there was this really big in the industry, there was this big push around things like Hacker News and Product Hunt and trying to make it the front page and kind of go viral on those. But it was a complete gamble. Like ultimately, it was almost out of your control. And even if you could pull it off once, you couldn't pull it off twice, right? And so they went and started a Substack, a newsletter, right? Did a bunch of awesome content, built in public, what they're thinking about internally, all this kind of stuff. They now have over 100,000 people subscribed to that newsletter. And so there is a huge fame effect that comes with that, in that they can, and this is what the content marketer from Postdog told me, they can basically get the equivalent of going viral on Hacker News on demand. They go viral equivalent every week, right? And they can do it consistently because they've built that audience, and that is the fame effect. Another like kind of metaphor around this I really like is this idea of expanding your luck surface area. If you have an audience of 100,000 people who love what you do and 100% are aligned with those values and beliefs that I was talking about before about having a foundational layer, if you have 100,000 people on an email list who are completely aligned with that, you are never starting from zero again. Your GTM motion is never, there's never a question, there's never a, like, is this going to land, whatever. If you continue to act in line with those values and beliefs and you leverage that audience of people who are already agreeing with you and already keen to hear what you have to say, you cannot beat, like, that's why it's such a moat. You cannot, as a newcomer into the space, you cannot compete with that ever. So yeah, the fame effect and just the general broader benefit of building an audience like that is like the value of that cannot be overstated.
What about like building an audience through ambassadors and influencers and things like that? Are you seeing that change over time since you first started, and what's it look like now?
Yeah, I mean, Clay is a really good example of another like B2B software business that have really lent into the community-led ambassador type approach. They've got a whole creator program, so people with audiences and influencers are kind of empowered to create content around Clay, and that's been a huge part of their growth engine. I think it is incredibly valuable, and it's definitely a bit of a shortcut to growth. Like growing your own audience takes time and a lot of effort. If you can collaborate with people who already have an audience, it's just kind of a shortcut, which is really good. I think the challenge starts to come when you are borrowing brand equity rather than building your own. And there's people that do it really well. I mean, Clay is one of those examples, you know, like they borrow brand equity and endorsements from these people and the creators in terms of getting in front of their audience, but Clay themselves have heaps of resources and great stuff going around that, and they, you know, they have fun brand and they do lots of cool activations and stuff. So they kind of convert that over into their own. But I mean, especially in the B2C world, you see a lot of like influencer collaborations, and then the influencer is doing a campaign for their direct competitor a month later. And it's like, well, you know, you're borrowing reach, but you're not kind of converting the brand equity. And I think that's ultimately that's the difference. Like you can leverage other people's audiences just for the impressions and the eyeballs, or it can be more of a collaboration and it comes as more of an endorsement and like a deeper kind of, yeah, brand connection. And that is where the value is. And I think that is probably where I'm seeing a lot more of the shift go. Because I think people are saying, if we're just paying for eyeballs, like we might as well just pay meta ads or, like it can be pretty tough if it's surface level. The real value of doing the influencer collaboration thing is in the depth of that engagement.
I love that. And like that's why I'm saying like ambassadors work a bit more. Obviously, influencers now I'm saying anyone who's sort of built an audience and brands trying to leverage or start a brand with them. And it's like if the person's got a 4 or 5 different brands, then what does it really feel like? You look at their page and it just feels like they're just peddling stuff. So it's like how it's like intentionality,
Yeah.
if that's a word.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think on the creator side, that shift is happening too. Like you can't really be an influencer that's just peddling stuff anymore because your audience will kind of turn against you and not be into it, right? Like for creators to be successful, there needs to be authenticity and intentionality around it. And that also is more impactful on the brand side.
Is that where you're saying like you work with people who might have built up that like borrowed that equity? Like a podcast is a perfect example. You get guests, you get eyeballs, but what are you building internally for the community, for the audience? Is that what you love to see on the different sort of strategies on how you can use that good work that you've done and turn it into something for you?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And there is value in going on to podcasts and just getting it. Like there's an awareness value there for sure. Um, but I think again, it comes back to you want to make sure you understand the audience. So the audience of that podcast that you're sponsoring, they're the right people. They're not just a random group. These are people who will get a lot of value out of what we have to offer. And then compounding that value. There's one of these great principles of persuasion around reciprocity, right? And that is ultimately probably one of the biggest ones that comes with this whole content marketing play is the concept of giving a hell of a lot before you ever expect to receive anything. Right? Like if you can give value through information, expertise, anything. Like if you're adding value to people, to the right people, then after a time, that is what returns ultimately. So yeah, like going onto these shows and or sponsoring anything really, is good from an awareness point. But if you can through that provide value, that's ultimately what will compound back for you rather than going onto those things through those channels to just put out an ask immediately.
100%, mate. I'm loving everything that you're saying. Let's talk about like you scaled the daily odds to 180K subs, if I'm correct. So what are some little tips for people there or simple things that people like constantly miss where you're just like, oh, if you just done a few of these little things, like you set yourself up for success?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things with that. Like I think it's really important to look at growth strategies. I see, especially in audience growth, I see most strategies falling into two buckets. You've got what I kind of call sugar hits, like things that you have to physically like do the work, and then you get a really big spike, and numbers are great, but then there's a crash. They're over. You're back to zero, and you've got to put the work in again to get another boost. And so that's things like giveaways, like yeah, sponsorships, any of that kind of stuff. Like you have to consciously do the work. They drive a spike for a period of time, and then if you stop putting the effort into that thing, it dies down. Um, they're good. They like that is where large numbers come from. But what you also need to factor in is the second bucket of compounding strategies. And so that's things that are kind of not set and forget, but like run semi-autonomously, lower numbers, but consistent every day. And so that's, for example, things like referral programs, that you set that up and then that's like you put comms around it in your distribution kind of automatically. And then that is just running. It will never bring in the same volume in a single go as a giveaway, but it will compound bits and bits every single day. And the quality of those audience members are generally a little bit higher than some of the sugar hit stuff. So yeah, I think when it comes to thinking about growth strategies, it's good to make sure there's a balance. People will very often quite easily come up with strategies in the sugar hit bucket, but forget about the compounding stuff. So it's just about finding a balance there.
I love that. And like you're right in saying you want things to just run. So if you're setting up communities, you want people to just drive conversation and feel like you've set up the right environment for people to just like you know, put themselves out there and just start doing stuff. Hey. So I love the referrals because that's the best one because you almost get pre-vetted people. They've already and that's the thing I think that a lot of people like, yes, you can put a lot of work into all this digital, all this sort of stuff, but it's like, what are people actually saying about you? What are they talking about you? So when it comes down to, are you speaking to your people properly? The messaging, does it always have to be clear or can there be some complex stuff where people maybe don't feel seen in that, where you can say it in a simple way maybe, and then it's easier for them to talk about. So it makes it easy to spread the word, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, making it easy for people to share you with other people is really important. Like, you definitely want that to happen. But it can also be just looking at, like, different market segments that are kind of underserved, you know? Like, again, this is a media business example, but I think the example kind of is applicable. But when I was at Mamma Mia, like, women's media company, podcast network, um, big business, like, that does awesome stuff. Um, we did some audience polling, and this is while I was working for, like, running their paid subscription, right? Getting people to become paying subscribers. And we were looking at products that we could offer beyond just, like, paywalled articles. Like, can we go into actual, like, product delivery of our own? And one of the spaces that came up was fitness, like workout apps. And I was initially very, very apprehensive because I was like, there are so many fitness apps. There's like, we don't need another fitness app. But we did a bunch of audience research and we found that the core demo that Mamma Mia reach are slightly older women, and they felt very unrepresented by the existing fitness apps. You know, we had one comment that was, fitness apps feel like they're for a 20-something that lives in Bondi, and you know, that's not me. And so we built a fitness app that was, you know, pretty straightforward, called Move by Mamma Mia, and rolled that out. And because we were transferring the brand equity in the Mamma Mia name into this audience who already backed us, even though it is a very saturated space, but it was a market segment that was underserved, and we were just the right people to serve them. And so it works, you know? And so, yeah, that's where really understanding your audience, even if your knee-jerk reaction is that's not gonna work, getting the feedback from your audience is really important. And this is where I think something that I've only really, like, you know, retrospectively come around to, there's actually a really big crossover between product management mentality and growth marketing mentality, especially when it comes to, like, content-led growth, right? Because a product manager, the gig is understand the end user, know their pain points, know their, like, workflows, like the user experience, what they're trying, like, jobs to be done, all of this, right? Know that better than anyone. And then your job is to take all that information in and design new systems and workflows that help to achieve those jobs to be done, solve those pain points in better ways, right? Provide them with value. You're doing the exact same thing in growth marketing. Understand the target audience. What are their pains? What are they trying to achieve? And provide them with value that helps them overcome those pains and achieve those outcomes. It's actually exactly the same thing. And so, yeah, that's where I say, like, a lot of people in the growth and content space get really caught up in channels and, like, oh, we got to be doing this, whatever. Take this step way back, come at it with the product management mentality. Who are we talking to? What do they need? What are they trying to achieve? And how do we help them do that?
Is that kind of why people want everyone back in the office in terms of that we can all just sort of sit around and speak about these problems and then you can sort of, from your department, go and talk with your team around that you understand everything? Because I think like as you scale and you get more people, that becomes harder to do, doesn't it, when to get everyone around? So is it setting up like habits and routines and things in the schedule where it's like, no, we're here to talk about this and yeah,
Look, I think there's no perfect answer to
yeah.
this question. Like, it varies company to company, and frankly, a lot of it comes back to what we were saying before about company culture.
Yeah.
Like if people are keen to collaborate, they will find ways to collaborate. That doesn't have to be in person. There's benefits to being in person for sure, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of businesses that are fully remote that can still pull this off. So yeah, I think it varies business to business, and it does get a lot harder as you scale. But it absolutely can be done, and I think a lot of it comes down to company culture.
One thing you said earlier was underserved markets and segments and stuff. I think that's a big one for me because whenever I'm thinking about a problem and that's like, who are the people who aren't getting hurt? Like, how do you sort of discover that? And in terms of strategy, where do you sort of place and fit that in?
Yeah, I think that the approach to this can vary business to business because the example that I gave around the fitness app, we already had an audience, and we discovered that they were the underserved segment of a different market in the fitness app space. So that was a little different. And I assume that a lot of businesses kind of already have the people that they're talking to. It's not about trying to identify a new market opportunity or a new group. It's more about like understanding the people that they already have. I think when what can be helpful there is to just go a step nicher, basically. So I see like think of like a ladder, right? And if your group that you reach is roughly middle of the ladder, you can kind of step up and down in terms of how niche or broad that definition goes, right? So say you're, you know, it's really hard if you're trying to reach marketers. Like if that's your group, that's like almost as broad as it gets. Real top of the ladder stuff, right? It means there's heaps of them. So your total addressable market is huge, but there's so many other people who are also trying to reach marketers. So that's going to be really tough to compete. And then as you come down the ladder and get more and more specific and niche, that's where you can find the underserved segments and the segments with less competition and yeah, basically being under addressed. And so you go from marketers to product marketers in Series B startups with, doing over 500K ARR, or whatever it might be. Like you get way more specific. And that really helps with your communication because if you can say that person that's really specific, it's so much easier to prove to them that you understand them because you can say, forget about everyone else. Like those competitors of ours, they're dealing with enterprise. They're dealing with, companies that have IPO'd. They're not the right fit for you. We are because we understand where you're at as a Series B company, right? And so that's where you can really start to find people who are underserved. They're probably being served in some capacity by someone, but they're underserved in that someone doesn't necessarily represent them 100%. They represent a broader group. So yeah, that can be a helpful kind of process to go through.
Oh, and I love it when you see things too, and you're like, oh, that's speaking to me, like they're speaking my language, or I can't believe someone created something like this. And it's just, it feels almost a bit loose. Or for me anyway, when things are a bit like loosey goosey and stuff, I'm like, that's pretty wild. And I'm interested in that. And sometimes it's not even necessarily what they're selling or their product. It's like, I like their attitude and vibe. So they get like a good referral from me from word of mouth and I don't even use it. Or is that sort of a key to growth as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the power of brand, really.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's you build this affinity for being whatever the positioning that you're going after. Like if you can build that affinity, then people don't have to be customers to make that association. But when they're having conversations and someone says, oh, we're looking for something like this, if you're the name that comes to mind, even if that person hasn't used you before, that's pretty major.
What about, we mentioned it earlier, content distribution. I'd love to know kind of what you think is overrated and what you think is underrated in that sense and sort of what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of buzz around, there's a lot of buzz around channels, right? And like I've said, I think that channels are the thing that will always change. Like newsletters have had a real second wave recently, right? And so they're huge. And so I think, we're probably starting to reach saturation of newsletters or, so they're probably rated somewhere in, in the middle.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But I think channels broadly are overrated. Like they will always change, especially social platforms. Algorithms will always change. It is a hamster wheel. And once you're on it, you are on that wheel and you are running. And you need to, like, you have to play the game. But I think broadly, like, that kind of stuff is fairly overrated. I think underrated is the systems behind content. And I think that's the thing that I'm so bullish on is it's really actually quite easy, especially now with AI. Like, you can pump out a lot of content. Like, more content is easy to achieve. Very, very easy to achieve. Content that means something and actually, like, has that spark of connection with a person that watches it, that's quite hard to do and becoming rarer to do. And so, yeah, I think underrated is people who are really good at taking this step back and knowing who they're talking to and then just talking directly to them, even when they are playing the overrated algorithm game. Like, you got brands. I mean, one like example that I love is TBH Skincare, right?
Yeah.
Skincare business, amazing. And they do all of the TikTok trends, right? Like, they've got a team of young women in their marketing team and they just film themselves around the office. They do every single one of the TikTok trends. So they're jumping on trends and playing that game, but they do it in a way that is so authentic and almost builds these characters, and you get to know these people over time. And that has been arguably the biggest growth engine for them is this organic content motion, because they understand the underrated element of how to resonate with their target audience.
And how have you seen to best measure that, like metrics? Like, what are the things that you're looking at where it might not be, you're chasing trends or you're doing this or whatever, but how do you measure that in terms of if you're not playing those games and stuff?
Yeah, it's not likes or impressions. And I think that can be tough. And coming back to the talk around like stakeholder management internally, when you're saying we're going to post on LinkedIn, it's really easy for someone that doesn't fully understand that to only care about, well, how many impressions did it get? How many likes did it get? Like, that is the obvious question to ask. And of course, making sure your content is seen by more people is important and whatever. But when it comes to that point around connection, the much more valuable metrics are things like saves, shares, comments, especially, and this is harder to track automatically, but comments from your target audience, like sparking conversations in comments amongst the people that you're trying to engage with. That is ultimately like the ideal outcome. So, I mean, yeah, there are metrics in there, like number of comments and saves and shares and stuff like that. Um, and especially on LinkedIn, the algorithm has started kind of preferencing posts that do well in those metrics. So that's a really good thing now too. But yeah, I would say the tough part with that is communicating that internally to people who don't fully get it and steering them away from just looking at impressions as the gold standard.
I love that. And I see that with LinkedIn too. Like, in my mind now, when I post, it's like, is this a convo starter? What will people share their stories of something that's relatable or human that's happened, but without it forcing it in terms of feeling like it's very well written or anything. But then it's not thinking about, oh, I don't want to make it look real and make few mistakes. Like, it's just, I think like overthinking stuff with content is just crazy. But does it help having data and numbers to reflect that, or does it make it harder with gut feel sometimes?
It's a really tough balance because if you go too into the data rabbit hole, it's pretty endless and you end up essentially in like performance marketing land, but for organic content. And you're never going to be able to achieve the same level of result there, right? So it's important to be data led and listen to that. But I think the thing that the data is leading is your gut. Like, and this is honestly, the beauty of organic content is the speed of iteration and feedback. You can post, even if you just like, you post daily, once a day on LinkedIn, right? That's 5 iterations in a week that you're getting better and better each time and learning something each time. Whereas with most things, like, it takes a few weeks to roll out a new marketing campaign or whatever it is. With content, you can learn so much quicker. And you're just testing. All right, like, we did this format, this topic, whatever it is. People seem to really engage with that. Let's do another one of those. Okay, this time it did even better because we talked about this other topic. Like, let's do a little bit more of that. And you're just constantly learning. So the data is informing your intuition, and your gut feel is the way that I kind of think about it. Like, they're kind of linked. Yeah.
I love that, and I think about that all the time because it's like, how much time do I spend on it? Because having so many chats in the industry and talking to so many people who do things different ways, it's like subconsciously, surely I've learnt something and picked something up where it's gonna be better, and I think even with LinkedIn, I love, like, when, you got new connections and you're seeing what they're posting and, like, looking back through their feed and sort of seeing how they're engaging with the community. Like, I see it like LinkedIn is a funny one because it's like, I love the behind the scenes stuff, and I feel like that gets the most traction, but it's also using it as a, like, distribution platform or notice board around sort of what's happening. It's like balancing that sort of stuff out, and it's interesting to see, like, a lot of the good ones don't even have any of that notice board stuff. It's just literally content for the people reading it and all the other stuff. Like, I fully believe that if you create cool stuff, especially on LinkedIn, or cool engaging posts, they're gonna click on your profile and see what you do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other important part of that is also that algorithms change. And that's a tough thing about that hamster wheel of social content is you can be using that data and training the gut feel, and then the goalposts move. And so that's why that iterative cycle of feedback is so important, is because what worked yesterday might not work today. And so it is almost like not starting from scratch, but you're constantly learning. You never get to a end point with the social media content. Like it is constantly changing. But I agree, there are certain things that just universally work. Things like build in public, or like general narrative storytelling, that will just always work. People are interested in that type of content. The specifics of the format will change. But if you can build a bit of an engine around some of those core kind of pillars, I guess, that are consistent, bringing things that are consistent into an inherently inconsistent system, um, is a way to A, keep you sane, and B, see some results from it.
Well, Isaac, mate, we have come to the end point of this podcast, but you've blown my mind, mate. Honestly, like hearing you talk about like growing an audience and sort of unlocking and leveraging different stages of growth and just how people should be talking to each other and understanding the customer the same. Like, I feel like there's so much gold in here, mate. And if people want to go follow your work, do they go to pistachio.io, is it?
Pistachio.so is the website, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to practice what I preach as much as possible, and posting on there. So yeah, find me Issac Peiris on LinkedIn.
Easy, mate. It'll all be in the show notes, and love the chat, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.